We live in a world where we choose the political candidate based on their agenda and proposal towards cater all the problem in the status quo. We believe this is problematic to begin with because there's no parameter of success under on how we choose the most empathy leaders, because the empathy is something that really needed in our status quo right now in order to cater our need, because not all the pragmatic benefit the pragmatic thing will be easily fulfilling without the idea of empathy to begin with, because we believe the idea of empathy it's something that going to be intertwine the interest of the candidate itself. That's why it's very important. The problem under our status quo right now on how the process of campaign is often only prioritize the goal. For example, under Islamic background itself, caleg will most likely only cater the idea under the Muslim community itself, but less likely going to cater any other religion, for example like Christianity itself, because the problem the problem of saturation of background and the bigger sense of belonging that make them want to prioritize the most background that in line with their interest itself, right? This is something that not going to be create significant push towards the status quo on how we create more empathy process of election that going to be running under the status quo itself. But second problem is unfairness toward the unfairness, because the idea of identity politics that running under the idea of pra-election itself. The problem that exists under the Anis voter that use Islamic identity to drive the voters itself, right? But we believe that the problem is also coming from the idea of political party that going to drive under the idea of candidate itself, that going to be create stigmatization towards a certain candidate itself to use any identity politic, for example under the PDIP concept on how Ganjar will see as someone that drive under the power of Megawati itself. That's why our goal in our government, we want to create empathy that should cater all the layer of community and individual to give communal impact towards the election itself. We don't want to appeal to certain candidate, to certain community only. But second, we also want to prevent the negative campaign and backdoors deals under the idea of pre-election itself to produce healthier campaigning process in the political world. Several mechanisms in our side of the house. First, we are going to do screening for candidates who are eligible to pass the certain points of morality itself. If they fail to pass the test, meaning they're not going to be elected as a candidate. They're not going to be identified as a candidate itself. But second, this is going to be accessed by all people around the world to open all the access towards the people, even they don't have access toward political parties at the end of the day. But thirdly, this is going to be based on the merits of morality itself. So it's going to be like clearly based on the morality to choose towards the candidate itself. Arguments, to jump to my argument why this is good for the process of election running towards the running of the country, and under the comparative why this is going to create better and healthier election process under our side of the house. First argument why this is good for the process of election and running of the country election in our side of the house. We believe that the candidate with high empathy will likely to cater the interest of minority and majority at the end of the day without actually they need to appeal into without actually opt into a certain background or even have the interest towards those communities itself, right? First, we believe that the idea of open doors for sincere individual by people with great or money and reputation is actually problematic under the status quo itself, right? Because the idea of candidate who win the election is based on the social status, political parties that going to be prioritize practical outcome and, for example, reputation, win the election and not less likely create any improvement towards the society, it is something that problematic under the status quo itself, right? Because the problem of because the first problem on how form of check and balance to make sure every people have their own degree of morality is really hard to cater, because there's not exist based on the it's not exist under status quo itself, right? We believe that we want to ensure the morality is good, will based on the idea of based on the idea of our proposal itself, right? That's why the parameter to choose the candidate will be objectively exist under ourselves the house to actually understand the morality of the candidate itself. Because in status quo, there's no like clear parameter to choose based on the morality of the candidate itself. Because the prerequisite on how you the success program coming from the candidate is on how they have empathy to a certain minority or a certain group at the end of the day. But the process of election is going to be very toxic under the status quo itself. Backdoor this black campaign identity politics towards certain candidate is something that morality is not going to be prioritized under the status quo itself, right? The parameter of success is not going to be manifested good, because the idea of interest society is going to be appealed under the idea of their needs are fulfilling at the end of the day. The polarization will going to be highly exist under the status quo, because the chaos and protest coming from the society to actually winning for certain candidate that they want to propose at the end of the day. That's why empathy will be the norms of choosing the candidate in ourselves the house. Why so? First, election process, we want to win and fighting towards the interest of this morality based to win the election itself, right? Because people will empathy will because candidate will with empathy will appeal towards everyone needed in terms of create the whole dynamic election process going to be eventually healthier without they actually using the idea of black campaign or even appealing to certain community at the end of the day. The incentive to prioritize humanity and morality will be higher in ourselves the house, and not enough coming from the opposition, because the agenda is not always going to be prioritize the idea of morality itself, right? Because the degree of morality is going to be different for certain candidate at the end of the day, right? It's going to be hard to maintain the stability of the election at the end of the day, because the main idea on how each candidate fighting for each other to win the election itself, right? But second, education towards the society to understand the value of morality will be higher in ourselves the house, because to begin with we don't want society to neglect the idea of morality to begin with. This is something that urgent to fulfill in order to fulfill their basic needs at the end of the day. Discrimination will not going to be happen if this political candidate appeal towards the all community without actually create any discrimination or even prioritize certain groups at the end of the day. The comparative in ourselves the house, all people will be fair to create accessibility to enter the political world at the end of the day. The process of election is going to be simple and accessible based on the morality merits of the candidate itself, right? Second, this is going to also create healthy political dynamic without actually using backdoor deals or even using a political power coming from the political party at the end of the day. But even if at the best case scenario on how opposition can run to choose the last evil candidate, is not going to be it's not going to be happen, because the evil one will going to be always win in ourselves the house, because there's no urgency to actually cater to the idea of morality at the end of the day. There's no normalization to prioritize morality in their side. So proud.
Thank you for that speech. To open up, okay, first up.
Okay, so I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I here as the leader of the opposition for the motion. Assuming empathy could be accurately measured, this house will only allow individuals with a high level of empathy for those outside of their immediate circle to run for office. Now, imagine a world in which people, candidates only running for office are only based on their high level of empathy. Now, this means that we are just going to abandon other aspects that could actually be contributes to being a good leader. Now, for example, we only see people that are suitable for being a candidate just by their high level of empathy, and people with good traits that are running for office. For example, maybe their track backgrounds, their experience in political world are just going to be abandoned because they lose to the people with high level of empathy. Now, before jumping into my arguments, I would like to rebut the government's claims. Now, the government claimed that candidates only prioritize their social status to actually get run for office. Now, do you assure that your candidates with a high level of empathy are not problematic? Because you actually said that people with high social status are problematic under your status quo. Now, do you have a guarantee that those people with high level of empathy are not problematic? And because there are no guarantee as to why there are no guarantee that people with high level of empathy could actually be a better person, a better candidate than those with maybe a lesser level of empathy. Now, we could see that people that are going to be affected if this narrative actually comes up is people who are actually running for office but without the highest level empathy level, because like it's considered high but not the highest, but they still have other great aspects that are actually suitable for being a good candidate and a good political leader to run for office, but they lose against those people with high level of empathy, whose only good trait is that high level of empathy. You do not have the guarantee, the government doesn't have the guarantee that people with high level of empathy actually has a better experience or better track record. Now, in our side of the house, we do not only rely on high level of empathy to make sure that they could run for election or office. There are still other factors that could actually contribute to being a good leader. For example, how they actually make decision for their people. People do not only cater to emotions of the people to actually make a decision. It's not only our feelings or our emotions. We still have to be realistic and stick to our principles to make a decision. Now, people with high level of empathy means that they only rely on their emotions to actually make the best decision for their people. Now, does this mean that the people will actually be very happy if the political leader that they choose actually has a high empathy level for them? Now, of course, there are still people who will actually appreciate those political leader that has high level of empathy to them, for example, the poverties, the disabilities. Now, there are still people who doesn't actually appreciate that, because they want a political leader, a leader who could actually run for who could actually make the best decision for them, even though they do not have the highest level of empathy, but they still know what is the best for the people, even though it's not based on their emotion. Now, let's see, for example, that there are people who actually cares about their people around them. They know what is the best for the people. Maybe the people are short on food, short on places to live in. The Chalik knows about that, but because he doesn't win in those high level of empathy, but his empathy is still high nonetheless. People, his chance to actually run for office just crumbles down because he loses in those aspect of high level of empathy. Now, we think that we should choose candidates who actually could run for office where where we not only cater to them because they have high level of empathy. Now, in our side, we will choose people actually based on not only one skills or factors. In the government side, it means that they only cater to the people with high level of empathy as the important one. In our side, we think that people are not just judged just by their high level of empathy. There are still other things to look at. For example, their track records. Do they have good track records? Do they go to jail? Or do they do something bad for the people? We could see their charisma as well. Can they persuade people to actually join their cause, to actually make better choices for the country? Or their experience? Do they have a lot of experience in managing people? Do they have a lot of experience in handling people with all of their problems? There are still a lot of other aspects that could actually contribute to a candidate that could actually run for the office, not only high level of empathy. Now, as I stated before, not all people with high level of empathy are good people. Yes, they could actually, with high level of empathy, it means they could actually understand your feelings. They could understand your conditions. Now, but so what? Could they actually help you with your conditions? If yes, they win because they have a high level of empathy. They could actually run for the office. But does it mean that they actually have experience to run in the office? Do they have the knowledge to actually know what the people actually want? The thing that they only rely on into making sure that the people want them is just by their high level of empathy. Now, in conclusion, we could see that people with high level of empathy is not that the people of high level of empathy doesn't mean that they actually are not unproblematic. Rather than people with actually high social status that could be problematic, but they still do not have any. But they still do not have any. They still have the quality and experience to actually run for office, and the government doesn't have the assurance and the guarantee as to why people with high level of empathy could actually be the better candidate and be the best candidate to actually run for office and become a leader for the people in their country or in their nation. And that is why we are proud to oppose.
Yeah, thank you for that speech. Now, the main second,
Oh, hindi. Ano pa yung siyem-siyem eh? Hindi ako bilang. Speech will start. 3, 2, 1. The fact that Jokowi wants to go belusukan, going to slums and seeing what other people interests and how the conditions of society formulate the interests of people outside of his own bubble exists because he believes empathy should be the main driver of you as a candidate, because empathy is what makes candidates more willing to go outside of his own bubble of interest and a bubble of his own identity. Two rebuttals in our side. They talk about how can you guarantee this and how the idea of caring for your society, for people as a whole, is not exclusive when you prioritize empathy. No. First, not true. Note that the willingness to go out of your own bubble as a candidate, seeing the interests of other people within society, the fact that, for example, Gus Dur wants to make Imlek official, the fact that certain candidates, even if they're Muslims, go belusukan to communities of minorities, exists because the recognition of you as a candidate that doesn't necessarily know everything but are still willing to listen to even people to oppose you exists solely because of empathy, because you believe that the interests of other people have the same level of importance and gravity as yourself. Second, they talk about how things like merit as a prerequisite is far better. Note that merit cannot survive as a parameter because you rely on the concept of every candidate knows everything. That Mahfud, for example, knows literally everything about healthcare, knows literally about the environment, for example, and every aspect of society, which are likely to happen. Note then the idea of collective merit of your administration, of you, for example, choosing a woman as a part of your campaign team because you believe that they give a different perspective outside of your own bubble, exists because of empathy, because of you as a person believe that the identity and interests that should also be catered should also done in the same manner. Therefore, the idea of merit of your administration being able to cater society only exists because you as candidate empathize with every layer of society, right? So one argument in my side. First, why the whole process of elections stemming from the process of campaigning to post-elections are more likely to be better. Note problems within society, right? And how do candidates conceptualize their policies and campaign strategies? Note that candidate is very pragmatic in status quo. The campaign process is based on how strategic and how they can fit the interests of the politicians themselves, the political party, and how lucrative the voting base is. Anies choose to pander to intellectual groups and Muslim groups and try to showcase the negative sides of other candidates because it is the most pragmatic and cost efficient way of campaigning. Name calling in social media, unwillingness to fact check your own supporters of calling Prabowo candidate mukbang, for example, or Gibran Musan, stemming from the fact that the idea of being a candidate is about being as pragmatic as possible. Not that this is something that we don't want in status quo. They formulate who they should campaign is based on how, again, politically lucrative, and therefore often people do anything to satisfy the interest of that voter base by all means. The prerequisite of that narrative of every candidate for themselves that exists within status quo, which is problematic, lies on the idea that election is a competition of winners taking all. People are fighting on who can get their interests actualized into real policies, and it's us versus them narrative, because to begin with, the idea of going to elections is not driven by empathy and the common good of the people, but because the pragmatic driver of wanting to get power, or at the very least, you get a representative of your own identity, and people who have the same identity as you. People then see other candidates who does not necessarily fit their interests as not people who have the same common goal of wanting to represent society, but as an enemy that should be defeated. This is because the underlying idea of candidates seeing themselves and seeing people is not based on empathy, but based on pragmatic needs to want to win. The harm then becomes every policy that you make, every strategy that you use is primarily on the interest of your own identity and at the expense of others. Others lose for me to win. This is particularly harmful because whoever wins, one, the discussions behind any policies, behind any candidates is less likely to be healthy. People talking about the morality and ethics of other candidates, questioning the history of candidates instead of the pros and cons of particular policies that each candidate wants to make. Second, only a select few gets their interest into the consideration of policy making pre-elections and also post-elections. Second, third, the polarization is more likely to happen because A, people who lose the elections will have a deep resentment and are willing to do anything to oppose. For example, like Ganjar and Anies refusing to accept their loss and pushing their voters to fight back against the result by bringing the idea of religion and Imam Mahdi, for example. And second, lack of post-elections mediation and reconciliation between each candidates. So how is this tackled in our side? Note then, the existence of empathy as a prerequisite of you running means that the likelihood of you first seeing the job itself as a president, for example, and other candidates are changed to begin with. In our side, people see the philosophical purpose of you running as running for an office, and how elections is about choosing the best candidate, even if it's not you. Even if you lose, you still see the purpose of elections being met because the common needs of society first are still being met in our side of the house. Elections then become seen as a means to an end of prosperity and not necessarily you getting elected, because you believe that even if I lose at the expense of myself, the interest of society as a whole is still being met. In a world where Ganjar has a high level of empathy, he will be more likely to willing to help the government through reconciliation and talking to Prabowo about how we are going to better cater to the interests of others who does not vote for Prabowo, for example. Even within the process of elections, empathy means you see other interests as also important. Therefore, you are more likely to listen. You are more likely to see other candidates as someone who has the same purpose as you, with matter a difference of how. Therefore, discussions of policy and how you campaign is more on technicality than essence. Ganjar understands that makan gratis is about helping the poor. The likelihood of this bigger in our side and the house because candidates are more likely to be principled. For all these reasons, back to proposal here.
Okay, thank you for the speech. Next.
Let me start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Imagine a scenario where dedicated public servants who have demonstrably improved their communities are barred from the office because a task cannot fully capture the depth of their concern for those beyond their immediate circle. Now, I would argue that focusing on a single metric, even a seemingly noble one like empathy, creates a dangerous oversimplification of effective leadership should be. Now, let me go into my argument while rebuttaling some idea that came from the government side. Now, the government side said that a leader who came from a certain background would also prioritize their backgrounds, but because they believe that the leader who have interest of other people is more important to having a leader who wants to go outside their own bubble interest. Now, this is why this kind of things that people who would prioritize their own background itself will most likely happen on their side, because let's just say this: if we offer emphasis on empathy for people who to lead the house filled, if we fill the house filled with people who have empathy, people who have like-minded individuals themselves, would only make them prioritizing one similar causes. Now, this could create a dangerous echo chambers because they would most likely neglecting diverse viewpoints and solutions. They even said themselves that effective leadership should require the ability to consider a larger range of perspective. But if we take all the perspective from people who only cares to empathy, how could it even work? Now, second, leadership requires a complex skill set, ladies and gentlemen. A highly empathetic candidate may lack the strategic thinking and decisiveness or negotiation skills. They cannot guarantee all of those skills from the empathic people because we need to navigate a complex political landscape in here. Because we want to enact the change. We wouldn't want to exclude people who have a brilliant policy or mind or a skilled negotiator simply because their empathy score falls short. Now, third, effective leader requires the understanding of the struggle of people they represent. Now, people with empathy is indeed valuable, but people who live through the experience in the community can offer even more valuable insights that pure empathy might miss. Excluding those with relevant experience, even if their empathy score isn't the highest, could be even detrimental to our political landscape. Now, the government side says that people with high level empathy leader will likely carry all. But here's the thing: if they carry all people, they would also most likely empathy with the wrong people. You see, a person can be highly empathetic towards a particular group, but what happens if it's a wrong people? Let's just say this: what happens if they are advocating for a struggling industry? They make protection policies to protect those. To protect that certain industry, but they forgot to consider what happens with the consumers. The consumers can be harmed in the long run. Let's just say, what happens if the policies that they make to make sure that this company would survive, this industry would survive no matter all, even if the policies makes them to not give any kinds of refunds, but the consumers in here wants the refund because the industry couldn't give the exact product that they wanted. This is what's wrong with using empathy as the basis of the leadership. Now, also empathy also doesn't guarantee someone will make the right choice. A truly ethical leader needs courage to stand up for what they believe in, even when it's unpopular or goes against the desire of a group that they empathize with. Now, there are also some reasons why. The second, I would tell you why requiring high empathy for candidacy might not be the urgent issue right now we have. Now, first, let us think about the long-term goal. Empathy in leadership is certainly desirable, but it might be a long-term goal to cultivate through cultural shift instead, or any educational initiative. Focusing on immediate solution like training or community outreach could be more practical than focusing on people who had empathy, because just because you had empathy doesn't mean guarantee you can give all the solutions. Why not just going to the immediate solution right now? And second, it's also connected to what they said, that we in our status quo that we don't have check and balance. We don't have a check and balance. No, it's wrong. Now we had check and balance. That's why we call it democracy. Many democracies already have checks and balance to ensure leader considers every diverse needs. Public discourse, elections, and representative system can act as filters, even if the leader themselves aren't full of highly empathetic people. Because this is why we have democracies even in our countries, Indonesia. Now, also there are more pressing issue right now. I mean, other countries or many countries like us face urgent challenges like economic instability, climate change, or social stuff like that. Focusing on solution to this immediate problem might be more pressing concerns than having a leader with empathy scores. Then, as the government side of the house, what kind of leader that we actually really do need in our side? Now, what we need is a leader not just cares through empathy. We didn't want to screen people just because their highly empathy isn't enough, but we want a leader to actually who's able to analyze complex situations, weigh options, and make decisions and clear visions for the future of their community itself. Because if we only check screening through basis of their morals. Even that cannot guarantee, just because the morals cannot guarantee what your future are, but your decision is what actually guarantee what will happen to you in the next few years. This is why rather than empathy, we want to make sure the leader has the actual capability, not just the empathy. Now, also, a strong leader should also have a solid understanding of the issue they'll be tackling. In this case, we wouldn't need to have a high score on empathy, because they have experience in these relevant fields. They have a strong analytical skills or a proven track record of solving problems. In our cases, even if their metric of empathy is low, but at least they understanding what the fields are, they're understanding what happens. They are more in our cases, the leadership will be more logical rather than basing on feelings instead. And also, we need to be realistic. Every leaders face challenges and setbacks. If they only cares through empathy, they cannot be adaptable or resourceful to navigate to difficult situations. Because if we chose it based on empathy, this is the one who will be impacted here. Not just isn't the house itself, but the community that they represent. Are they capable enough to face all of these challenges and setbacks? Are their feelings based choice is enough to carry all of those kinds of things? We need. This is what the government side forgot to think about and that's why, as the government side of the house, we propose that we shouldn't just allow individual with high level empathy to run for office, but also thinking about all other things that could also make them pass as a leadership, because this is even very detrimental for the community future. Maybe that's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that speech. To continue the debate, I call. There we go.
Timer dulu. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. One thing we must remember since the very beginning of this debate is that these people are soon to be feeding off tax paid by the people. So essentially they are social workers. They work for the people, for everyone, the ones that should truly understand and care about every party and every section of segmentation in society, what they want, and so can empathize with everyone's struggle. Merit will finally win only under our side without the gimmicks and the promises, as has been explained by my previous speakers. It is not our burden to explain why or how they will cater or how the policy making will be, because believe me, it's possible to cater panels. If they wanted to, they would, the way Gus Dur did when he has the power. And now, two rebuttals. One, we are not abandoning other aspects. If they say that their experience and track record matters that much, one, experience-based. If that matters so much to you as a voter, you can choose the older ones per se. You can choose the ones that you already trusted or that you know. Secondly, about the track record, most likely their track record will be good if they have the correct moral compass, or like they have the great empathy itself. But thirdly, in the status quo, people still question Mahfud MD even as a previous minister, how he shows his empathy, right? Even if he has provenly a highly intellectual based on merit per se, he was questioned as his comments kept like moving side to side on the idea of the LGBT community per se and many more. But even if on our worst case that they say we exclude merits, at least on our side, you don't have to worry about their morality anyway, and so you can just choose based on who you think is the smartest or the most capable.
What's the very important anyway, it's actually how the pragmatic drive that Nail explained is actually sincere, and how they will work for you no matter how their experience, no matter their track record, no matter their merit. But secondly, they wouldn't be empathetic towards the wrong people, as said by the deputy leader of opposition. Policies they make will be very much carefully made, instead of in the status quo, right? How as a leader you are only pragmatic and leave your people behind, as we can see right now. At least they wouldn't push their interest or what the quote-unquote country's interest, no matter how many layers that they put into it, but what they actually cater is your interest. So all of the amazing problem solver are probably actually empathetic, because whose problem that they are solving is the ones that needs to be solved at the end of the day. So the ones that you're talking about is actually the ones that we are screening under our side. Even if they make some policies that might hurt some people because there are too many diversities, they must have enough initiatives to make at least people understand that, oh, we do this because of this and this and this and this, and they have enough capabilities to actually like let you know, and like why does we make this kind of policy, and why we are very sorry that this could be disadvantaging you or your community. But then because people already know that they have the correct moral compass and they have the high empathetic, they are highly empathetic, people have more trust towards the government, and that people can actually understand if some policies are unfortunately made not to be catered towards some people. But moving on to my clashes, right? Firstly, on how we can guarantee the capability of, say, chosen leaders. Opposition responded only by questioning one or side of the house could not guarantee that their several greed will take over. Nonetheless, at least we don't have to fight to prove who is the lesser evil, because they have passed the test. Secondly, their greed, although minimal, will be overpowered by their empathy anyway, because that is how you are as a human. Sometimes this is very hard for you, even for us, to be empathetic or to follow our ego or things like that. But if you're highly empathetic on your own, you will be empathetic naturally. This is the simple logic why we did the screening since the very beginning and to propose this motion to you panel. Even if their greed will take over, check and balance then become very strong here, because now people have the bigger reasonings or like bigger expectations towards you, and are actually becoming more politically active because they have already, have bigger incentives to go to votes due to this motion that we proposed, because they now finally have that trust that has been lost all through these years, over morality and over how leaders and representatives are actually caring about the people behind them. When the people has become more politically active, check and balances will be much better under our side, and we don't think opposition has tackled that down in their attempt. But second clashes about the ultimate benefits. We think that this still stands harshly under government, and opposition did not engage to this. Firstly, before the election or the campaign itself, this looks like what Niall has explained. There will be black campaign. This will be less hoax and allegations of insincerity that turns the border against one another. All of the after effect of less polarization, and yeah, basically all of those things that are very harmful towards the country before the election happen, and why sometimes election can be a very tough period for some countries per se. But secondly, after the election itself, we guarantee you representatives and leaders then will not let anyone behind. We guarantee you a more diverse candidates, because Naur has explained to you in status quo, they are always overshadowed. Remember this. This looks like candidates that came from the slums per se, like minorities who have less resource or reputation. But reputation and greed always win in the status quo, and you must only choose based on identity per se, or like if they're your family and said, right? But remember, this is not that we are excluding majority. If you are proven to be empathetic the way Gus Dur does, care for the Tionghoa community and give them the national Imlek holiday, you will get the seat even though you are a majority. Secondly, realize that government never have a significant stance on whether how they want to stay in the status quo, or they can offer us some kinds of any alternatives on what should we prioritize other than just staying in the status quo, or like actually being actually disagreeing with what we propose to you, that how we want everyone to be screened, and how we want only those who are empathetic to be running for the president. And very importantly, they never cater towards our cases, in which we have explained to you how this can stabilize the country itself from the upcoming election season, and how this can finally solve all the problems that has been done collectively and structurally towards the years that has been the way that the politics has been shaped, and the way that how the people, how the candidates turn their do the polarization and turn their supporters one again each other. Very proud to propose.
Okay, second last speech, supposed to debate, I call, turn off.
I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for having me. I am the whip of the opposition side of the house. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, first thing first, opposition team is a team with a clear stage. We believe that a high empathy level isn't the only criteria that must be paid attention when looking for a leader. High empathy level leaders are not the urgency. Why I say that? Because they are not the main priority to look like, yes, empathize with you. It means that they understand you. I mean, or like they feel what you're feeling about, like they understand your situation and etc. But will only with empathy level or high empathy level make them a good leader? No, ladies and gentlemen. How can I say that? Well, ladies and gentlemen, just because they understand you, it doesn't mean that their ability to make a good decision or their ability to become a good leader is the same. No, ladies, it's at two different level, ladies and gentlemen. Because I will give you another situation. Is what if the candidates with the highest empathy level didn't have a single experience for a leader? They never become a leader, even just like a small province or small area. They never have that kind of experience. But just because they are the highest empathy level, maybe their moral, like their friends saying that, oh, they have a good moral tracking, or because they always like helping other people, helping the orphans or something like that, you choose them just because the morality level of tracking. No, ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't prove that they will be suitable for become a leader just because they have a moral tracking and without any experience. Because a leader not only handling like how to giving bansos or having like money or helping other poor people with like condition that like maybe still lacking or something like. No, leader is still need to focus on another aspect, ladies and gentlemen. So just because they have a high empathy level, it doesn't mean that they also can become a good decision maker and can lead organization or perhaps a place. Now moving on, the government team is always keep making the opposition side of the house that empathy criteria the leader is can do that a leader without empathy level or like less empathy level can do whatever they want, like they are free to do whatever interest of their own or interest of their group. No, ladies and gentlemen, we need to take a look that even in like a small organization, there always like branch, there's always like someone that in the control that to limits the power of the leader, so they cannot do whatever they want. This is proving that in the statement from the government side of the house that stating that the people that the leader can do whatever they want just for their group interest or not. So this is proving to be untrue. Now moving on to my rebuttal. So my first rebuttal is that the government stating that in their state that they doesn't need to care about morality after they see the candidates the candidates people said, so they doesn't need to care about the morality again, just they need to focus on the like what the achievement or the like smartness or something like this. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is untrue. First, why? Because high empathy, as I said before, high empathy level with doesn't the same with the like the moral value they have. Because I will give you an example. There is this kind of people that we call dark empath. Like I will give dark empath is people that can understand you. It is the same with empathy, but they do it for ulterior motive, their own interest. So they can understand you. Just the same with empathy. Both of it can understand you, but what it different is how they use of this ability to make their decision. This kind of people, even though they understand you, they will still do bad things. They will perhaps like manipulate you or just using this ability to understand other people for their own needs. See, this is proving that high empathy level didn't stand the same or did like go together with how high moral value people is. So it's so the statement that they doesn't need to care more again about the morality just because the high empathy level proving they are a nice people. It's wrong. It's untrue, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I will moving to my second rebuttal is about the government stating about they won't be they stating the argument from my team that stating about they won't be empathic with the wrong people. Now I will giving you a case about Rohingya. See, I will give it the government in Indonesia is carrying more, giving treatment like more than the treatment they give to the citizen. They even the house, free place, free drinks, free food, and they even give a payment check. The payment, the money, the money they keep giving the money. See, they are not our citizen. They come from other people, but they empathy. They are so high level empathy. They giving more treatment than how this whole time they didn't give it to their own citizen. This is proving our point. We want to making sure that just because you're empathic, you could be making like making a bad decision. Like you giving more to those people that like even we could say it's illegal citizen, ladies and gentlemen. You prioritize more just because their condition is like worse than your own people, just because you see the minority rather than majority. Because even though in Indonesia there's still majority, there's still so many people in Indonesia still lacking a place to live, food, drink, and even money to like fulfill their everyday needs. But they just basically giving that so easily to those kind of Rohingya people just because like, oh, I'm so empathetic with you. I understand you didn't have place. So see, this is the point that this is what my team actually want to studying about. They could give their empathy to the wrong people. Now moving on to my first classes. So my first classes is about why government either leader who's only get chosen because their empathy level is high is not an effective way to choose a good leader. I think both of my previous speaker have already given you certain actors that how about this kind of actors that with like not that much high, but what like they consider high, but not the highest empathy level, yet they didn't get chosen. But even though they have other aspect, perhaps like they have like a record of like already being a leader for a certain area or a big area, and it's proved to be like improved. That area is improved, yet didn't get chosen because there's another candidates that only have the highest level empathy, and that's why they are chosen. Because if we apply the government policy, it will create a mindset to the society that people who like have a high level of empathy is a nice people. This will create a mindset to the society, so they will like just directly, subjectively choosing that kind of people just basically with just because the mindset and the narration of people that with a high empathy level is the nice, as the leader is the light, just because they understand you. But it doesn't proving that just because they understand you, they could making a great help to you. So that's why, ladies and gentlemen, the opposition provides giving you a solution that we don't need to just looking only just based their high level empathy. We also need to take a look again to their record, to the other aspect of or abilities they have. So that's why, ladies and gentlemen, we as the opposition side of the house oppose this motion. Thank you very much.